Hey guys, JV here with Level Up Gaming, back again with Journey to Andromeda, a weekly series where we share our thoughts on the Mass Effect franchise as we play through the entire series leading up to the release of Mass Effect Andromeda. Picking up right where we left off, last time I just became a Spectre, played about the first 2 hours of the original Mass Effect, and after I became a Spectre, of course, this opens up the next 3 things you can do, which is going to Feros, Noveria, and recruiting Liara, the Asari scientist. I chose to go to Feros first because I feel it's always easiest at lower levels. You really only face Geth, and if you bring the right, combination of squad mates, and it's really easy to just overload, dampen, sabotage all of those enemies. And of course, this was the first time I hopped back in the Mako, and oh boy, this thing it's atrocious. It really is bad. People that complain about the Mako are completely right. It's not a reason to write off the original game, but man, it feels like they took the Warthog from Halo and just made it terrible. I mean, that's really what it feels like. I want to say they took the Warthog controls and just made them unusable, because if you remember controlling the Warthog, you use, when you're playing with a controller, forward on the left thumbstick is to go forward, but if you turn the camera around, it's going to go backwards, or there's some weird disconnect there, and it's even worse with the Mako. It just never goes where you want it to go, and it doesn't shoot where you're aiming as well unless you're on completely level terrain, which there's not a lot of in this game. I think it's especially bad on Feros just because you've got this ramp that kind of divides the skyway that you're trying to go across with the Exogeny building, and it's just bad. It was definitely the worst kind of exposure to the Mako I had again, but it makes me optimistic because, BioWare knows how bad it was, and we've already got a video outlining what's going on with the Nomad, which is the new version of the Mako. It already seems like it's going to be much better. So if you don't remember, the whole deal on Feros is that there's a company, Exogeny, and it's their headquarters there. They're pretty much run the whole operation on this planet, and they ran an experiment on their colonists at Zoo's Hope, which is just a human colony, and it turns out that there is a plant, sentient life being, the Thorian, which is super, super ancient, just sitting underneath Zoo's Hope that's releasing spores into the air that are controlling the thoughts of the colonists there, and Saren wants to destroy the Thorian because it does have knowledge that will help Shepard take him down, so that's why the Geth are there, that's why the Asari are there, and all of that. So along the way, you help a group of people that are trapped that work for Exogeny. There's also a side quest with Gavin Hossel that I did. I'm trying to kind of stick to the main line because I do want to finish the trilogy before Andromeda comes out, but I did do this one that kind of runs alongside the main mission, so that wasn't a problem. Funny enough, I don't remember saving the colonists. I don't remember doing it in the right way, which is equipping the gas grenade that neutralizes the Thorians, mind control instead of just killing all of the colonists. That's kind of one of those Paragon or Renegade choices. I feel like I just didn't know what I was doing when I was younger, and I just killed all of the colonists because I remember being frustrated with that. Maybe I just didn't pay attention, but I did do it right this time, and of course after you do that you have to go down into the Thorian's lair, which is an interesting area. It was difficult for me, I remember in the past, but it was a little easier when you equip shotguns on all of your characters, no matter if they are trained or not, and save often, because you're fighting these Thorian creepers, which are kind of, like thralls. I know it's a Destiny reference, but they're just running at you. They're really easy. If they get close to you, they'll vomit all over you and tank your health, but if you equip shotguns, you can knock them on the ground. If you melee them, you can also knock them on the ground. It's really easy to deal with them once you know what you're doing. So essentially my strategy was to kill the Asari first because they posed the biggest threat, save when I could, and make sure the Thorian creepers were not attacking my squad. So once I got through that, of course, you get the little cutscene where the Asari gives Shepard the cipher to decode the visions a little bit more. He still doesn't understand what was going on with that beacon on Eden Prime, but that is the end of Feros. After this particular mission, I took some time to walk around and talk to my crew, and it just made me realize how much Mass Effect, the original game, is just like every other game in the trilogy, and I don't remember going around and talking to my squad mates in the original game nearly as much as I do in the second and third games, because there was always an incentive in those games. It was for a romance or some other, loyalty mission, stuff like that. It was like you were obligated to. In this one, it just feels like you can walk around, talk to your crewmates. There's, no pressure to do so, but if you do, you learn a lot about them. So I thought that was really cool. Next up, I decided to go recruit Liara, and the reason I did this in this order is because I wanted to go here to have Liara on on Noveria because that opened up, interesting little dialogue lines between Liara and Matriarch Benezia, obviously. And also, I found it really interesting that this is the last squad mate that you recruit in the original game. That's just how it goes because there's not a lot of squad mates in the original Mass Effect. There's only 6, and that's actually how many are planned for Andromeda, as we know. Of course, there may be more. We may be surprised, or, that might be it. Maybe there's going to be more in DLC. We don't really know so far. I was also surprised that the expectation for the game and BioWare was that you just find the right system or planet that Liara is in. They only tell you kind of the star system that she's in, the Artemis Tau Cluster, but they don't tell you, which smaller solar system, I guess you could call it, and planet that she's on. I don't know if that's information that I just glossed over, but I couldn't find it within the game, so I had to Google it, and I thought that was really strange. On this mission, and I guess all of these missions that I did in the past week, there's more Mako gameplay, but this time on more open terrain. I thought this was a lot better than, the exogeny skyways on Feros, a lot better than that, but still awkward, still weird, and they definitely have room to improve with the Nomad in Andromeda. Pretty much the same as on Feros, the primary enemy on this mission is the Geth, so again, that's really easy to handle as a Sentinel. That's what my Shepard is, with Garrus on my squad as well, and then I've taken Rex up to this point on every single mission, so that really balanced out. Since I am a Sentinel, if you balance out the biotic tech and combat, those were all even in balance, and that's, kind of what I go for. This is just another one of those missions where I remember almost everything that goes on. Everything that Liara says is just immediately in my memory. The one thing that struck out to me was the battle with the Krogan and kind of his force as you're trying to escape the Prothean ruins, and that was a lot easier this time around. Again, I don't know what I was doing when I was playing the game before, but the Krogan can sometimes give you troubles because they charge. They just dash forward, and they will usually insta-kill one of your squad mates or really hurt you, the player, and you'll have to reset that sequence. So again, definitely easier this time around when you know how to handle a Krogan. After the mission, we got that initial tension between Ashley and Liara. Of course, Ashley just seems jealous at this point because Liara is just, this new girl on the block, and she's taking Shepard's attention, but it's for a good, reason, right? Liara is this totally innocent, super brilliant Asari, whereas Ashley, I don't know what's going on with Ashley. Speaking of which, I spent some more time with the crewmates, talking to Garrus, learning about, C-Sec and his father, and how he was, vetted initially to become a Spectre, but didn't because his father didn't want him to. That was all interesting. But the thing that really stuck out to me is Ashley hitting on Shepard immediately. I just went to talk to her, and she was, saying, "Oh, you're just my commanding officer. We'll have to see about that." And I was just like, whoa, Ashley, take a step back. That's just not happening. We're going to keep this professional. I also discovered the special requisition officer there who's like, I buy my own stuff. This is not, standard issue Spectre stuff. This is even better stuff. So I don't remember that, but it kind of makes sense. And I remember more of that stuff in the later games. So either I didn't talk to this guy before or I just don't remember. But after this point, I unlocked Vermeer, and I thought it was weird that I could go there before Noveria. That's never something that I've done before because it always makes sense to go to Noveria to see Matriarch Benezia before going to Vermeer. So at this point, I was already a decent enough level to tackle Noveria, which I consider to be the toughest of these, particularly because of Benezia and the Rachni, which we'll talk about in a second. So when you first get to Noveria, the first hour is kind of a slower point. There's not a ton of action, there's not a ton of combat, but I really appreciate that. I think it's one of the cooler looks at the slower parts of Mass Effect, where you have to deal with the bureaucracy of Annaleis and Gianna Parasini, Lorik Keen, and all of that stuff. You learn that Noveria is corrupt. It's really just a front for businesses to conduct illegal activity through Ambassador Annaleis, or whatever his title is, and you really get to walk around as Shepard and flex those I'm a Spectre muscles and talk to people, and I think it's a really cool part of Mass Effect and something I want to see a lot of in Andromeda. Again, I remember so much about Noveria, so I went through the motions of talking to Lorik Keen, gathering evidence because his office got shut down by Annaleis because he's corrupt. I worked with Gianna Parasini, who's an intelligence officer who's undercover. I convinced Lorik Keen to testify against Annaleis again because I went with the charm route with Shepard's, level up points, and I got through that part pretty quickly, about 45 minutes. At that point, I was off to find Matriarch Benezia, and something that I found on Reddit actually is you can hop in this Mako right here. It's almost like a tank in the garage. I don't know if you can drive it around. I didn't hop in it because you get less experience by killing people with vehicles, if you guys didn't know that, so I didn't get in. I wanted all my XP, but you can hop in that Mako. Really interesting. But of course, after this point, once you get that garage pass, you got more Mako gameplay, which is again very similar to Therum, the planet, where you rescue Liara. Just an open area. It's kind of cool though, because you're navigating through these mountains, and there is a hazard level. If you hop out of the Mako, then you see, you only have a limited time before you start losing health and you die, and that's going to play a factor in Andromeda. There's going to be some hazards, and the Mako is going to have to be equipped to handle those. So there's going to be a lot more depth with the Mako, which is something the Nomad, which is something I'm looking forward to. Once you make it to the Peak 15 research facility where Benezia is hiding out, you meet the Rachni, which is a new race, and I always hated the Rachni. I always hated, they were like bugs. I don't really like bugs very much. And I will say one thing, when you're fighting the Rachni, they are too quick and agile to hold up in the original game. With all the performance issues, it's hard to fight the Rachni because the game doesn't let you very effectively. Like if I was playing this on Insanity, for example, they tear you up on Insanity. You really have to be equipped, use those neural shocks to, make them useless, and just pound them before they can even hit you. I've always felt that this is one of the more lonely and desperate missions as well, because you're just going through these endless tunnels, and it's just dark and depressing, and there's this infestation of this alien. Again, it's like a bug creature that I don't like. It's really a slog through this part to get to Benezia. Before I got to Benezia, I decided to help the doctor and find that cure, and that's not something I did before for some kind of engineered weapon that's banned by the council. But if you help the doctor, he'll, make sure it doesn't get spread by binary helix and this whole kind of side story. But I also went through maintenance, which is something I don't remember doing before. I don't know if that's required to get to Benezia or not, but I did come across Benezia sooner than I expected. I am playing the game on regular difficulty, so not really impressive at all, but I did beat Benezia on my first try, and this again was an easier fight than I remember it being. I just used stasis to single out certain opponents while taking out the others and making sure I wasn't getting hit by Matriarch Benezia in the middle. Since I brought Liara along, that made things easier as well, since she's got all those adept, biotic powers, and we got those cool lines from Benezia and Liara, her saying, yeah, I basically kill my own daughter because I'm being controlled by Saren. So once you beat her, she reveals the Mu Relay, and you're able to find Saren after that. Unfortunately, Benezia is so corrupted by this point that she can't survive, so she just dies right there on the spot. At this point, Shepard's confronted with the big decision to either kill the Rachni Queen or set her free, and this is just such a cool moment where she possesses the Asari. The Asari comes back from the dead and talks to Shepard. She's kind of shaken, and the way she's talking, it's just such a cool, sci-fi moment, and I love it. It's so disturbing and unique, and it catches you off guard, and it explains, what the Rachni are all about and how this queen is different from the other ones. They actually don't want to, take over the galaxy and all that stuff. And of course, I set the Rachni Queen free. I'm leaning more Paragon like I usually do, and I'm doing this also because I know it helps in the later games. They help you against the Reapers if you free them in the original game. The final order of business on Noveria was to deal with the hot labs, where you had to finally purge the Rachni that can't be turned back, and it took me a couple tries to get out safely. You have to talk to that scientist there who gives you the purge codes, and then you have to run the hell out. I did try to kill all the Rachni and the workers that explode, but there were just too many. And then I realized, oh yeah, you just have to run out. So I made a quick save and did my best to run past all of them and get the hell out of Noveria. Before we wrap up this episode, my Shepard, I like to keep you guys updated on, what I'm doing with my Sentinel in terms of skill points and all that. Essentially, my goal here was to grab as many abilities as possible and focus on a few. As you guys may or may not know, the original Mass Effect is designed, and a lot of them are, for multiple playthroughs. So level 60, I think, is the cap. You're not expected to hit 60 in your first playthrough. I think you hit around 40 or 45, something like that. I'm just trying to master a few electronic skills and biotic skills, tech and biotic, since I am a Sentinel. I am still regretting grabbing Assault Rifle as my bonus skill because the pistol is just so good. When you compare it to the Assault Rifle's kick and all that, it's so much more easy to use. And you have that kick-ass ability in the Sentinel tree. The Marksman pistol ability is so good. I just regret getting the Assault Rifle, but it's too late now. Over the next week, I plan to tackle Vermeer. Obviously, that's a classic mission. So many important things happen. Of course, I'm going to traverse the Mu Relay and then learn a lot more about the Protheans and the Conduit. And I might beat the original Mass Effect in this next week. I'm not sure. I feel like I'm about halfway through the game, just looking at my level and whatnot. I'm thinking about the side missions. I may or may not do any. I don't think they're super worth doing in this first game because there's a lot of kind of just empty exploration. They don't feel as fleshed out as, some of the side missions in the later games. That is it for this week's Journey to Andromeda, but I'd like to hear from you all. What are your favorite moments from the portion that I just played? We're talking about Feros, Noveria, getting Liara. What are some of the memories that you have of this portion of the game? Share what you guys are thinking in the comment section below. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for constant updates on when we're uploading new content. Check out our website at Level Up GMG, where you'll find complete libraries of every single video we upload moving into the future. Also, if you're feeling generous, consider supporting us further through our Patreon. Becoming a patron allows you to engage with us directly and unlock exclusive content like monthly Q&A videos. So visit our Patreon if you'd like to learn more. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button and click subscribe if you haven't already for more tips and tricks and gaming related videos. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time here on Level Up Gaming.